I'm going to begin with this one because this one caught my eye really quickly when it was posted on the Google Hangout page. And let me choose a background color. I mean, not the Google Hangout page, the Google community. And I wanted to sort of cover some stuff because this has a lot of potential. It's just soaring potential. I really think it's very beautiful. But there are some minor texture and lighting issues that are really crippling. The pose seems so fluid, but the anatomy issues and the shading issues and the texture issues are all sort of blocking the flow sort of the design, and the even the saturation levels and the colors are fine. I wouldn't even touch those just for stylistic effect, because sometimes mixing the anime aesthetic with some level of form or some level of realistic form study, you get that nice balance where everything is super saturated and super cartoony, really, really appealing, but also has that reinforcing feeling of realism behind it, just to push it that last bit of believability. So I like it where you're going with this. That's why I say it has potential. It's got an audience, and I just sort of want to push it a little further. I might be spending the whole critique on this. I'm not sure. Every critique hour is different, but I feel like there's so much to cover with this image. I just want to do it right away. Stuff that I like about it. I love the color of the hair. I love how you chose the color of the hair. The color of the skin is also really cute. It might need a little bit more yellow to it because it is a bit pink right now. Kind of coming too close to the neighborhood that the hair is coming from. What you want to do is you want to choose a hair color that matches the skin color, but you don't want to choose colors that are analogous, because then it's going to look like some sort of like you just threw a color wash over everything and everything has the same tint over it. So what you want to do is bring in some yellows. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to correct the color of the skin tone, and we're going to see where we can go from there. So I'm just going to choose this like green yellow, and I'm going to, usually I don't choose a skin tone from the green, so close to green. This is green. It's not even, beige anymore, or like a pale orange, which is what you kind of want, a pale pink, pale orange for skin tones. But because I'm going to be using a color layer and there's already red in there, what the green is going to do, I'm going to push it up a little bit into the green. It's going to cancel out some of it because greens and reds don't really get along on the color wheel. So we have to just push the yellows up just a bit. So find that spot you want the skin to be. I want the skin to be this color, but it's already pink, so I'm going to be overlaying this color over the pink. I want to use some of the pink already underneath the color layer. I want to use some of the pink you already have in here. So all I'm going to do is just push that skin tone layer up into green, and then it's going to do a nice little balance. So does everybody get that? Why did I choose the green? Can anyone answer the question? I need to decrease the opacity just a little bit. Cancel out the red, yeah, but to keep some of it though. We want to keep some of the red because skin is it's alive. If we cancel out too much, the skin will lose its touch. So what we want to do is bring in just a little bit of yellow or green, the green that's in the yellow. So I'm saying green because there's a lot of green in yellow compared to orange. It's a lot closer to green. It's the next door neighbor. So we have to travel through the houses as if one house is connected to the other, and every house is a color. We can't get to one color without passing through each house, and that's what we want to do. So I'm doing just that. If it gets to be too yellow for me or too green, I'm just going to erase away what I don't need. So this is all photoshopping. This is stuff that you shouldn't be depending on. This is me photoshopping and editing and photo editing. I'm photo editing right now. I'm not really painting. What you want to do is choose your skin tones ahead of time and really make an effort to balance all the skin tones early on. And of course, you have to always avoid analogous colors as much as possible if you're trying to represent like an organic structure like that. It doesn't have analogous colors to it. Like she can have green hair. Her skin still has to have that natural color to it. So before, do you see that pink? And after. I feel like I put a little bit too much green around the chest. So I'm just going to take away some of that. Do I have pen pressure right now? I don't think I have any pen pressure. So do you guys see the difference? A little bit of a warmer. Before it was cool, because what we were dealing with was a pink that was a bit on the purple side. And so pink and blue and purple are all on that side of the cool houses. And of course you have to pass through the houses, like I said. So what we want to do is bring it back in toward the warms of the color wheel. Just like that. So I'm going to merge that down. Now I'm going to touch a little bit on shading properly. So thinking about a light source. Again, like I always say, you cannot shade anything if you don't have a light source guiding you. If there is no light source, there is no cast shadow coming from a direction that is unified, that wherein the light rays acting as vectors, acting as straight lines that constantly move straight forever and always and never stop, have something that interrupts them, and therefore we have a cast shadow or contour shadows. The only way to shade is if you have established a light source. Do not shade symbolically. Don't shade around the lines or fill in the lines or have like a little gradient from the edges to one edge. That's not shading. That's not thinking like form. You have to think of the human structure, the human body, as a 3D structure, as a 3D system. And by shading in a way where you anticipate the 3D, sort of the presence of the three-dimensional, you you would know exactly how the cast shadows take shape over the contours. You would grow an instinct for the cast shadows' actual shape around the form and the contours and the high points and the altitude and the hills and valleys that are on the body or any other organic structure. That's why doing form studies is so good. It keeps you, appreciating the presence of the core shadow in response to a light source. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing some of that shadow in first just to try to get some sort of pop out feel for the skin and the arms. The arms really just are sort of holding most of the gesture. What we're seeing is, two symmetrical poses, two symmetrical arm gestures responding to the two symmetrical little designs on her, or the little attachments on her clothing. So we want to keep attention on these two main gesture lines that are drawing in the whole image. So I showed you guys before how to do collarbones. I've told you many times, don't go too light too soon. You want to do it strategically. You want to use the lights only where you need them. You don't want to, use your trump card too soon. Light is your trump card for form. If all else fails, what you want to do is bring in the highlight, place it in that select spot, and what you get is that that 3D effect. But people overrate highlights. They think highlights are just a quick fix. They're not. You just have to do it right. They will betray you if you use too much. So what I'm doing again is I'm just framing around the spheres, finding the core shadow. So half her face would be in core shadow. And instantly by adding the core shadow and bringing the lights down on her face, we have highlights on the areas where highlights go, like I've showed you guys, that had the light spots, which are on the cheekbone. And there's going to be a little bit on the tip of her nose as well. I'm also going to darken with that same skin tone color around her eyeball, on the whites of her eyeball, because they are in shadow. And I'm just going to try to sharpen the shadow just a little bit. And now I'm treating it as a 3D structure. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to imagine where all the diffuse light is reflecting from. So is there going to be diffuse light from the cheekbone up into the top eyelid? Yes, there is. Just a touch. I'm going to bring in her eyebrow to close in front of her eye just a little bit more. The function of the eyebrow, again, don't sacrifice design over function. If you have to choose one or the other, choose function. So yeah, she's being really surprised or whatever, or like cute, or that kawaii bird face, cat face thing, which is cute and nice, but you want to be able to think about function. So what does the eyebrow do? The eyebrow shades umbrellas over the eye. So that's the point here. That's why I'm pushing it forward. It felt a bit distant, losing its point and purpose with the anatomy. She is a humanoid, or a human type, or a human, so you're going to have to think about how much anatomy you can really sacrifice for the sake of the design. So function of form and function over design always. I'm going to continue to close off the sphere shape, bringing my opacity down. I want a bit more control, because her face is blanketing over, her hair is blanketing over her face. I will jump into liquefy in a second. Her neck seems to be a bit thick. Some of her hair might fall over her shoulders. Sorry if I'm not looking at the chat if anyone's talking. I just want to concentrate on this for now. And now we'll take a look at your questions. If you do have any questions, please feel free to tell me. Rudolph, if anybody, I mean Drake, I'm sorry, I totally just told you out. If anybody if anybody asks a question, please message me on Skype and let me know. That's your job. You're officially inaugurated as the messenger. If anybody asks any stupid questions, I'm punishing you. Okay, so I'm just continuing. I'm going to bring in some of that light. So I'm just thinking about the principal lights I need. I'm just thinking about the principles and the fundamentals. Nothing brought in that is stylistic. Nothing design oriented. I'm just thinking about the form, the basic shapes. I'm just a shape connoisseur. I'm all about that 3D. And that's all I'm doing to this image. Imagining where I can apply the 3D. Welcome, Ineva. So still maintaining the level of realism. Still keeping all of that in there. I mean the design, but we're adding a level of realism to it. I'm going to bring in that shadow, that beautiful shadow that we place underneath the upper eyelid. Beneath the upper eyelid. Did I say that right? Yeah. And I'm going to carry some of that highlight right under. I'm going to try to create some sense of a lower eyelid. Even just a small shadow will read a little bit better. And then we have just some function, again function over design. It's okay if this sourced from a sketch. It would look good as a sketch, but it's no longer a sketch because now you're thinking about a light source. You trying to shade is you thinking about a light source, so it's no longer a sketch anymore. If you want to have, see the thing is what you did here is you went and brought a highlighter, a shadow, and cast it up, even though the light is coming from above. So the shadow of the collarbones is supposed to be on the bottom. And that's the only way it'll ever read. See, it already reads just by doing that. So instead of doing all of this whole mess, we just throw one base tone color, I showed you guys last time, and then bring in the highlighter, and then just throw the light. And that way the midtones around them will create the feeling of a collarbone instead of depending on shadows, because what you're doing with shadows, which you don't know you're doing, is you are using lines. You are depending on your lines. Your crutch is on the lines. The lines are your crutch. Of course it does need a little bit of a shadow, so I'm just going to stretch this shadow underneath. And now we have a collarbone that reads a little bit. I'm also going to place some light. Breasts don't naturally collide. Breasts, especially if you want to create a natural looking female figure, if you do a lot of figure drawings, you'll notice that the breasts don't collide. They sort of just, if they were eyes, they would be unfocused. I don't know if you guys see it, but in a female form, even a male body without a shirt just looks like a face. It's hard to unsee. You'll always laugh if you see it. So what I'm doing is I'm just separating, placing some space. So that's what I'm doing here with the light. I'm creating a feeling of space in between. Okay. Again with the shadows casting from above. I don't know why, but don't do that again. The shadows should be casting from below because the light is coming from above. The light isn't going to forgive any shadows in that area. It's just going to cancel them all out. A little bit of shadows on the side, carrying the light up into the collarbones from above. It's already starting to come together because I'm thinking of it as a cube. the top part of the shoulders, that, you know, if you had a parrot, it would be able to sit on the top part of the shoulders. Right now, before you drew it, the parrots can't sit on the edge of a paper. And that's how you drew it. If she had a parrot on her shoulder, it would be sitting on the edge of a paper, because you didn't draw it as if there was a top surface, the roof of that building on the shoulder area that the parrot can sit on. So that's sort of what I mean when I say three-dimensional. You're thinking about the top sides and the bottom sides and the side sides. So still just not using any highlights. I'm just trying to bring everything down to a midtone. And if this was in grayscale, I'd just be painting with grayscale tones. So you see there's no highlights necessary yet. Even the ones on the face are just kind of ticking me off. Just want to bring them down. I don't really need them because grays are so beautiful, and gray with a little bit of color washed over it is even more beautiful. So I just want to avoid depending on highlights if I can do so much already with the midtones. Highlights are that last little thing you get to win if you do enough midtones. You win it. Okay, now into liquefy. Actually, let me just throw the highlights on the top side first. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just, after getting my midtones, I'm just placing the highlights only in areas where I know are directly exposed to the light. So the cheekbones, the nose tip, the chin, which I will have to fix in a sec. This area here is still too dark. The tops, a little bit on the tops of the collarbones. Little throat hole. Don't do this or this for the neck, ever. Unless she's a bodybuilder and has only ever worked out her neck her entire life. Because she's a neck model. Unless that's the situation, don't ever do that. Most likely is not the situation. I'm going to cast a shadow of the dress over here. Let's remove this cast shadow. You don't need it because there's no shadow there. You don't always have to outline everything with a shadow. Sometimes just let it go and have one highlighter shade beside whatever it is that is on top of it. Don't be afraid to stack. It's something that is really common. Don't be afraid to stack units together. Okay, so I'm just going to darken this. So that in liquefy I can see my way around. Lighten it up after. So is everybody with me? What am I doing right now? What is it? What is the principle of what it is that I'm applying here in corrections? Can anyone tell me? What's the point of all of this? What is it? Cube. Form. Yes. Beautiful words. Wonderful words that should always be hovering in your mind. Cube and the form should be your new muses. Should be your love affair. The cube should be your your mistress or your gigolo. I don't really know the equivalent of mistress, the male equivalent. Probably still mistress. Okay, so that's all that I'm doing right now. I'm going to jump into liquefy, and I'm going to think about the edges of this form. So does her waist really need to be that thin for it to be a waist? Can someone answer that question? Is the waist really this thin? Is it really necessary after we shade appropriately? Is it really necessary to exaggerate in cartoon proportions? Do we really need this is actually one of the discussions we had in the mentoring group. We don't really need to use cartoony proportions to make something realistic or make something read a little bit better. If we have the realism intact, the realism will do that for us. If we have, the basic body that doesn't have like a Disney princess waist, has a very, squared waist, it will still read. It will still look very, very pretty because the anatomy will still be intact. We will still have bone structure jutting out. We will still have balanced, head length. We'll place the crotch in the right spot, just like I'm doing right now. Before it was way off. This whole area would be closed off. We no longer need it, and if we expand the width of the hips, the waist will automatically take its shape. So I'm just trying to think about the bone structure. As for these joints, she's supposed to be a mannequin or some sort of android or doll. I recommend a really, really strong reference. Like, just build a strong reference folder for this. Because if you work your way around it, what you will be doing is something uncanny. Meaning you will be placing non-anatomically, like you will be placing alien artifacts, I guess, into over top, not into anatomy that is appropriate. So what happens when we have high believability and high familiarity over something or a topic that is ambiguous or something that is not necessarily, that cannot be found in the real world? That's where the uncanny valley comes from. So if you do not think about the exact way these joints might work on an android, what you're telling me is she's got these weird folds on her skin. I'm seeing skin folds. I'm not seeing an android. That's why I say beware of adding these alien artifacts, because it will alien artifacts, because it will look uncanny if you do it wrong just the right amount. Okay. So what's happening here is the anatomy sort of coming together. I want to create a bit more of a believable sort of bust. Before it was really off. The breasts were mostly focused forward. If the nipples had lasers coming out of them, so imagine a laser bra. The laser should be shooting in two different directions. Before, the lasers are shooting directly at the camera. They just zap the camera. What we want to do is see the lasers come out, like lopsided, like they're not focused, like unfocused eyes. So their gravity is pulling them not only down, but to the sides away from each other. Uncanny valley equals if the amount of realism increases, there's the state where you're quite unsure, and it makes it creepy. Yeah, high familiarity, sort of, and then thrown over something that is not realistic in nature, that is not a real unit of the real world, like the realistic Homer Simpson. He had the skin pores, he had the hair, he had, skin, but it was just freaky as all hell because he wasn't a real structure of the real world. Okay, so before, after. Do you see that difference? Now we have some sort of edges that reinforce the form. So when we think about the cube, let me just give you a quick little thing. Basically, these are the edges of the cube, but they really mean nothing without these. Did everyone see what I just did? So these lines mean nothing without these lines. What does that mean? Can anyone answer that question? What are these in relation to these? You can't just throw the word form at me and expect that to be the answer. Yeah, I love form. I'm a cheerleader for form. But you can't just, storyteller. Yes? No, this is the XYZ. These are the XYZ. What are these is what I'm asking. So XY and Z, or ZZZ. And what are these in relation to these? The edges, yes. The sides, yes. The perspective, yes. Shifts in plane. What do you mean? As edges which create form. I'm looking for a very specific word. What do they represent about the form? What are they telling me? Over here, it can go on infinitely. But when I add these, what does that mean? The depth is in the XYZ. The perspective is in the XYZ. Edges is definitely the term, is the topic at hand. dimension is the XYZ. They end. Thank you, Michelle. You always seem to have the answer. That's the limit of the form. So if you have the 3D and you have the idea that this object is jutting out and sticking out at you, and it can come out of the canvas, and it can live, what happened, are you still thinking about the three-dimensional when it comes to the two-dimensional, because this is still two-dimensional, are you still creating a two-dimensional outline that reinforces what the XYZ is telling us? So it's not as simple as a cube. I wish it was as simple as a cube. It's not. The human body is very sophisticated. So what's happening is you are not outlining around the 3D. The core problem is that you never drew 3D to begin with, but you were trying to, and you're doing it symbolically. What you have to do is, yeah, you have to start shading three-dimensionally, which means where is the light source? And you have to start outlining around that three-dimensional structure. So if there's symmetry to be considered, consider the symmetry. If there's a perspective, if some of her torso is facing this way, then you're going to have to cut off a little bit of the sides of the breast just to make it seem like her body is facing in that direction. If the edges, doing the edges right, basically, and the simplest way to say it, doing the edges right is just as important as shading three-dimensionally, shading and contouring three-dimensionally. If your edges are all wrong, then you're not going to do it right. Another big example of where you guys do this is in the three-quarter view. When you guys draw faces, you'll draw the eye, and you'll draw the nose, and you'll draw this beautifully shaded cheek. Look at that. Okay? And then this will be the side. This is the side view. This is what you guys are going to be doing. Maybe it's not that bad. I'm really making you guys look bad. I'm so sorry. But you guys are going to be doing that. So what you're going to have is this beautifully shaded orange cheek. You're going to have this beautiful piece of poop right on top, this white highlight. And then from the side, what we're going to have is just a flat cheek. This is because you're not thinking about the edge in the way that it reinforces the XYZ. So it becomes a cross-section of the XYZ. So what we're going to be seeing is, it's like having a tree that has many ridges. So this is the tree, and this is the little, like if you're standing on the stump looking down at the stump of the tree, and this is like the tree root. This is a cross-section. If you take a sliver of it, like a chip, like a potato chip, the potato chip will have this shape. This is what I mean, the edge of the potato chip. If we were to do a cross-section, we would see this edge. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of you, yeah, you got the shading intact. You got this part good. You know how to shade. You know how to make it look 3D. You know how to make the lights fall and blend together. But when it comes to this, you guys are lost because you're like, oh, what the heck do I do now? I'm at the edge. I'm at the end of the 3D. This no longer exists past this point. What do I do with this line? How do I create an edge that responds to the three-dimensional? The XYZ is one big massive thing, and then there's the edge. How are you going to make an edge that reinforces the XYZ? That's something you have to ask yourselves. Okay. Oopsie. So does everybody get what I just said? It's kind of a bit of a, not really advanced, but it's kind of a complicated little topic there. It's mostly for those who are just starting with shading or have been shading and don't really know why it's not looking right. That's pretty much the best thing. Yeah, we're going to fall off, exactly, just like when the world was a cube. Yeah, or flat, when the world was flat. So exactly, you're going to fall off. So how are you going to make it that there's no more information after that, that you can't shade anymore? You can't use shading as an excuse anymore. You no longer have shading to make it look good. So what you have to do is you have to start depending on your shadow, on your edges. So this, now what I'm doing now is XYZ editing. This is me just making the boobs look like they're actually facing upward. So the top area of those, I'm going to have to choose a highlighter. The top area, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice for some reason. I'm so sorry, let me just get some water. Okay. So the top area of the breast is going to be getting some light on it. And I'm just going to throw some shadow over here. Sorry, kind of made her boobs look big. I don't know why. Okay. So now the shadow on that breast area is reinforcing, again, the 3D. But this isn't edge work. This is not edge work. This is basically what I just explained is what someone who's telling you need to work on your edge work. Someone who's telling that to you, basically they're saying, I don't get it, what's happening on the edge. But everything I'm doing now is not what I just taught. This is all XYZ stuff. This is me making it seem like her chest area, meaning the peak of this mountain, is facing the light. I'm also going to fix up these little sleeves because I kind of messed them up in the liquify. And again, just like everything else, you don't need a lot of shading to make it read. So if you're doing silk or fabric, tiny little motions can make a fabric that reads. And use your pen pressure and your transfer. Use it to your advantage. Don't just sit there shading, wishing that it could finally start reading. If you have the color of the silk and you have transparency and transfer on, let me just turn down my transparency. You really just have to take advantage of the fact that you have transparency available to you. So instantly from that you can create some kind of fabric look and then just start shading the fabric just like that. So not a lot of strokes are needed to make it seem like this is a fabric. So do you see how that quickly read? Just strategy. That's what it is. RTS. You just have to think about it like that. If you play League of Legends, you have no excuse. And you're good, and you're diamond level or gold. You can do this. Guaranteed. Sue me if I'm wrong. Alright? And then of course, it's just like hair. Same thing. You have to add the highlight. That looks more like silk to me. And you can just shade all you want. You can shade till the sun goes down and then comes back up. And add more stuff. But essentially the principal texture, which is this is me on the texture portion of the critique. The texture was overthought. You're overthinking the texture of silk. It's really in lack of texture, but you over-texturized it. Silk doesn't really have that much of a texture. That's the point. It's beautiful and soft. It's the anti-texture. It's not cotton. It's not sequin. It's just supposed to be smooth. It seems like you were going for silk. I'm not really sure if that's exactly what you were going for, but if you want that look. Also, this transparency will bleed over the rest of the edges on the sides of her shirt. I'm just going to jump into liquify again and fix up the shoulders. Just realigning the form symmetrically. A body should be pretty much, when it comes to symmetry, the body should be easy to deal with because you really just have to balance them both. That's all you really have to do. Now that I've sort of brought down the width of her arms, the length of her arm was an overcompensation. Her arms are super long if they can reach down to her. Like my arms, if I stand up, they probably reach to my hips. But I think that's it. They don't go all the way down. So you're going to have to push this up just a little bit. Just trying to find the major bone juts. Okay, so again, find a really good reference for that Android locked in, like that robotic joint. I don't think it'll take a lot really for it to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do my little thing. Show you sort of how I would do it. So I would shade the arm like I would a normal arm, like a human arm. And shade it normally. And then what I do after that, just trying to find the high point. the arm over here, and that goes down. What I would do after that is get the lightest color on the arm, throw it over the joint, and then beside it lay the darkest color. And then shade around. Because now this is starting to become the top part of that joint area. And this is the connective part. Just going to lasso the actual joint connection. And that's sort of like working smart, you know, avoiding overworking something. And then, again, find a reference. This is just like sort of the quick fix for the critique. Find a reference for it that will help you. Get the anatomy down first, and then think about accessories. So shading around it. Just thinking about where the light would come from. Or it would be the opposite because the light isn't coming from that area. But there would still be some secondary light source happening. Something similar to that, where you have the bottom cylinder facing. So just thinking about it as shapes. So this reads a little bit better for me than what you had before, which was two joints layering on top of each other and hoping that it starts to read. You want to avoid that. Never just blindly hover. Don't hover render. What do you guys think hover render means? Can anyone tell me? What do you think I mean by hover render? Hover blend or hover paint? No idea? Anyone care to take a guess? I just invented it. Not putting just render over the whole thing, not putting down paint. Nutriment got it, but a little bit more explanation. Render one spot without context to the whole. Yes, Draken, always spot on. Hoping for it to work, yes, exactly. Blending too lightly, not lightly but cautiously. Yeah, caution is definitely a part of hover rendering. You just stick around. You stick around and then you just stick around and that's it. You're really just hoping that it starts to read, and it won't read, trust me, unless you're like, you know, you're the god of visual library and you're like the photographic memory guru. It won't start working for you. You still need a reference to guide you around it. And the reference, don't just look at the reference and copy it blindly. Try to find the best way to copy that reference down in the most minimal strokes. So what is that reference telling you? It's telling you 3 major shades, 2 major shades, what is it? And then copy it down. Just going to make this edge a little fuzzy. So this area here, what I want to do is I want to just finish select inverse. I'm going to choose a final shade for that chest area because it's the most outward part, and if you know anything about design, you're going to want to render the boobs, you know, if anything about your audience. So what I'm doing is I'm placing that shadow underneath, and I'm going to respond to that shadow with the edge here, or sort of the end point of the breast area. And then the cast shadow, of course, or the falling shadow, the little edge of the dress over the rest of the body. So that point is directly looking at the camera along with her face. So we're looking down from her face down to her bust. It's pretty much a portrait with little attachments. Again, the shadow of this area here, not necessary. Now I need to throw some shadows in from the hair. Well, only on this side though. Bring that highlighter, throw it over the frontmost part of the neck, because it is catching some light. So something similar, you might want to do that to the other arm, or like after adding that part in, maybe like connect it to another piece, so there's like another little piece like that. So continue this gradient over, and then that way you have some sort of mechanics built into her joint, and not just throwing random symbols or drawing from memory hoping that it reads. Again, spot rendering or hover rendering. Finally, same things go for the legs. Bring those highlights down. Bring them only where you need them. You do not want the eyes to lead all the way down. So I'm just going to make the lower part of her legs fuzzier, and I'm going to throw them off into some shadow, just like that, because I don't want the eyes to go there. I did all this work over here. I want my viewer to look at that. And I'm just going to place the highlight of her thighs only in the high points. Just like that. And again, look for a good reference. You don't want to be bad on scale. You don't want to be bad on anatomy or function. You don't want to be bad on any of that. So I'm going to have to jump into liquefy again. The jump. Push the thighs in just a little. That thigh gap is so unbelievably tricky when you want to put it in with the characters. It can make the whole thing look wrong if you don't have a good reference to guide you around it. And I think that thigh gap got in the way of rendering the actual length of the groin, because in my opinion there wouldn't be a thigh gap if she's doing that, even if unless she was like anorexic. Like, no offense to anyone who's anorexic, I'm sorry if you are, God help you, but I'm saying, like, unless she was super skinny or bony, if she were to cross her legs like that, she does not look bony. She looks like she's, you know, like there. So she might have like a tiny little thigh gap, but that would be it. And then I would need to close off the edge. Again, with the edge, you have to make sure, if it's a solid edge that has suddenly ended, you gotta have some hard brush and just end that, you know, end its misery and just end it. Do not let fuzzy edges happen on hard edges, on hard subjects, hard material. Again, a texture issue. There wasn't much of a serious edge happening in all fronts. Maybe it was a work in progress. Maybe you weren't really done. That's okay. I'm just trying to push the anatomy in a little bit better. This thigh, because this leg is on top of this leg, this angle right here would be a little bit more tilted toward the right. And at this point, after you have the realism, this is where you can start breaking some rules. So, if you do want those old proportions, after you've done the realism, pinch the waist. Go right ahead and do it. It'll still read, because the form is still intact. Go ahead and expand the size of the waist. Go ahead and, you know, make her arms super, super skinny. You can go right ahead and do this. Bloop, bloop. It'll still read. It's okay, because right now we have the form structures, the basic anatomy of her design, still following some realism. So if she was an android, the android designer could have made her boobs big and her hips wide and her waist tiny, but he would still be using realistic material, spheres and cylinders and cubes. So this, as long as the spheres and cylinders and cubes are rendered as if there was a real light source in a real three-dimensional realm surrounding a real character, then you're good. You can mess around with all the proportions of the world. You can really go crazy. And that's what I mean. You have to learn the rules before you break them. If you don't learn them, you won't know these subtle little cheats that you can have. You won't know about them. And that's unfortunate. I do want to keep the green saturation. I think it looks adorable. But if you do want to bring it down, go ahead. The highlight on her hair is needed. And the little halo at the top. Whoops. So it's not going to, it's not a bad thing, boys and girls, all 41 of you, signed in and not signed in. It's not a bad thing to fall in love. I'm joking. It's not a bad thing to learn some form. It's not a bad thing to learn some form structure. It's not a bad thing to just fucking get in there and do some real still lifes of cubes. Get some Legos and get a lamp and just shine some light on some Legos. Build some Legos things. Make sure it's one color. Many colors are just gonna fuck you over. Set those up and just start doing some studies. Observe how the light hits the object. And not just polygons. Go for spheres. Go for random organic shapes. Draw a pear. Draw a vase. Anything. Your cup. As long as you think about the form in your mind is always reared around the form, thinking about the actual physics. Whenever you go in and try to design anything, you're going to think about everything as a building. Everything becomes a polygon to you. And that means your art is going to improve drastically. If you don't believe me, take it from me. I had really crappy art last year. I don't know if any of you noticed. I don't know why you guys even trusted me back then to teach you. I don't know. I'm not going to go there. But as soon as I started doing some form studies, my mind really wrapped around. I was safe, you know. I wasn't expected to draw an eye and choose a nice hair color and choose a nice costume. God, I was like, I can't do that anymore. I need to learn form for form's sake. So I just started doing form studies. I just got my lasso tool and I just started making polygons and invented a light from the side and just started acting. And I started acting. I started drawing. Yeah, get some form into your practices and studies. Choose one day of the week just to do some form studies. Let me see some more form studies posted on the Facebook page, posted in these critiques. They may be boring, they may not be colored, they may not be interesting, they may be extremely repetitive and at times redundant, but they will affect your art. That I promise you. If they don't affect your art, you can come to my house and throw an egg at my door, okay? I won't give you my address, but you can come to my house theoretically and throw an egg. Not theoretically, figuratively. You can draw my house if you want and throw an egg. Same here with the joint. You might want to get rid of that. Think about only the anatomy. Then after you're done with that anatomy, damn, I'm going to lose that pretty transparency. After you're done with the anatomy, then you can start bringing in the props. The android joint is a prop. Transparency was so cute though. Yeah, you'll have to clean it up. So just throw an egg at the stream, not your monitor. I promise they will help you. It's not something that won't work. It will work. Right now, everything that I'm shading, I'm literally shading out of muscle memory right now. All I'm doing is thinking about these legs as a polygon. That's all that I'm doing. Just thinking about the points that are the highest. Where's the highest point of this cylinder? And the legs read. Do the legs not read, boys and girls? Are the legs reading or are they not reading? That's all you really need, especially if you have like a stylized thing going on. This highlight will carry into her dress. The crotch area will be closed off. That's all I'm doing. This is why I can teach and draw at the same time, because my mind is so used to drawing form studies and so used to thinking about this that I can just depend on my visual library to give me information. Okay, what's the best shade I can place here? Which one reads better? Which one matches the images in my brain already carved in because of all those studies? You're only going to get better than you are today, tomorrow. Why would you want to stay in the same spot? How is that going to improve your work? I'm going to choose one last highlighter. I'm going to push up into the yellows and place some light only in the high points. Okay. Save. I'm going to desaturate the background just a touch. Oh, whoopsie. Desaturate that background. And I'm also going to desaturate this green, just for the sake of the color balance. What the heck am I doing? Damn it. Oh, shit. What I am going to do, though, is the lightest spots of this green. See that white you had on the hands was way too bright. That's too bright. It's taking all the attention away from the image. You do not want to do that. Okay. It's a bit dark, you know, it's like a dark green. If you just want to bring in some highlight, just do a little thing like that. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I sound so horrible. So I brought the saturation down, but now I'm going to bring the saturation back, only where it's needed though. Just on those last little highlights. So this has a lot of potential where you're going, the style, I don't want you to lose it. It's very cute. It's got a massive audience for it. Game, you know, fan art wise, it doesn't matter. It's a massive audience. So don't lose this style, it's nice. But again, you're not going to have believability and your audience isn't going to go nuts at your work unless you have some realism. It's just really what carries you. Deselect, filter, liquify. Oops. Okay. So this is great because I found this on the Google community. I'll link it at the end. I'll link it now. Go to the Google community and talk there, because it's really the best way for us to stay connected. And I get to see some of your work. Some of you don't really post, and it's nice when you have more than one person. And I'll ask you, hey, can I take a look at this in the stream for you? Because I feel like the corrections made on this everyone can really benefit from. So can I take a look at it? And then of course you would say yes, because if you didn't, I'd ban you. I'm joking, I wouldn't. My God, what happened to my voice? One last little thing before I have to go is the shadow of the hair. Anywhere where the hair is not looking up at any light, I'm going to bring in a bluish red. So I'm going to, it's not really a blue anymore, it's just pure red, but it's the shadow of red. It's got a little bit of blue in it. It's not blue, but it's cool. And that's where I'm going to place this shadow. The lower bangs. On the hair behind. Shadows of the hair here. And then I'm going to get that highlighter and place it on the areas of the hair that are being illuminated. So you might want to add another little piece. Let me add it in for you. Just like that. That'd be a little bit of an intrigue. Okie dokie. So one last little thing about composition, you might want to, like, I don't know, maybe give her a bow that's green or some sort of final little addition that connects the colors. So it'll be green, red, green, and the green really is all over the place, so you might want to tie it back together by adding that little green addition somewhere. I don't know, if you want to make it a bow, make it a bow. If you want to make it like a bird or something. I think the bow looks nice, but your choice. I don't know, that's starting to look cheesy. Who knows? Give it a little bit of transparency and then close off the canvas. Actually, I like that background color. Is that just gray? Okay, never mind. Just closing off the canvas very gently, nothing too serious. So I hope I made sense today. I'm not sure if it did or not, but I hope everything was sort of explained well. I know it can be a bit complicated. So before, after. Okay, yeah, after. More of a three-dimensional character. Everything is really believable. Same character, same pose, same. It's like the, you know, this is where you're going to be if you do some form studies. More anatomy, more skin feel. The skin before was actually no. This isn't the edited version. This is the version that I had to close. You're not seeing the before and after for the color correction. Let me get the original version. I'm sorry. One moment. My fault. My tablet wasn't working. Thigh gap is gone. That's kind of the body type she had. Maybe it was my tastes. I'm not really sure. But if you want the thigh gap to be back, you're going to have to look for a good reference to guide you through. Musical. No, it's not musical. It's no. It was in the Google community. One moment. I'm sorry, guys. Desktop. Save. Just need to make her the right size. Okay. Before, after. Warmer colors. The background does seem a bit empty. You might want to add in something into the background. Okay, so whose is this? Gilly? Oh yeah, it is Gilly's. See if you can replicate Ista's changes. I don't want you to just to copy it blindly. Again, I want you to think about the principles and the lesson and the point of it all. And it's the form. It's the form studies. That's it. That's the key to drawing better. Have a great day and bye-bye. Oh, and the next meet is on Tuesday. Tuesday, the 5th, the 6th, the 9th. So crazy right now. Tuesday the 9th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to share it and talk to your friends about it if they're also interested. Bye-bye.